Hare Krishna, dear devotees, Dandavat Pranam, Jai Srila Prabhupada. So good to see you after such a long time. All right, so we have quite a few to get started here. And let's see if I'm broadcasting on Facebook or not. I guess I am, but let's see. Okay, so what we're going to do today is we are going to focus on chapter 2, which we have finished. We will go and have a look at what we have studied all these days on chapter 2 and prepare ourselves to get into chapter 3. And then I'll also open up for question and answer sooner than later, because I know quite a few of you had questions. We didn't have classes and you were doing private things to me. So we'll use this opportunity to do that as well. So as usual, we'll first get started with a short prayer to the spiritual masters and the parampara. Om Ajnanitirandhasya Jnananjanashalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamahyam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Sri Guru Shri Yuta Padkamalam Sri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunathanvitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadhutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhanvitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namastute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priya Vancha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Gaur Premanande Hari Hari Bol. All right, my obeisances to devotees here, as well as those who are watching us on the Facebook. So we'll get started. Like I said, we will go over chapter number 2. It's been a long time. And we will try to see what are the things that were covered. So with that, I'm going to start sharing my desktop number 2. And does anybody remember what's the name of chapter number 2 of Bhagavad Gita? Take out your notepads and shoot up a text to me, letting me know what is the name of chapter 2 of Bhagavad Gita. And I see 2 chats have arrived. And let's see, I'm waiting for more answers here. Okay. So Ajna Mataji says contents of Bhagavad Gita. Yeah, so contents of the Gita summarized is a precise answer to that. But anyway, in a sense, it's the contents of the Bhagavad Gita summarized, which means that if you understood chapter 2, then, you more or less got it, all of it. And then Krishna, of course, goes and elaborates a little bit more later on the various concepts that he brings in subtly in chapter number 2 here. So I'm going to start sharing the screen with you. And here we go, sharing the contents here with you. Okay, so let's go and see what is happening here. And I like to kind of give a little bit of a structure to this chapter number 2 so that you can see the bigger picture over there. Okay, so as far as the big picture goes, when we know something happened in chapter number 1. What had happened in chapter number 1 was that, all right, let's go and have a look at chapter number 1 of Bhagavad Gita and see that there was a lot of, tumultuous sounds and roar and anticipation and excitement about, having starting the war, right? And of course, the narration starts with Dhritarashtra wanting to know what asking Sanjay, his secretary, what's happening on the battlefield, right? So in the beginning, there's a lot of military speak there. There are, people talking about, a gathering of great warriors on the battlefield, the way they have arranged the phalanx is there. And then also there was talk about how Krishna arrives and there's a counting of the opponents and the reckoning of the strength, and the bugle starts sounding and everybody's fine, and Arjuna is also very excited. And in that excitement he says that, hey Krishna, I want to see those who have assembled here to fight with me. Yotsamana viveksheham, right? So he says that I want to see all those aveksheham, I want to see, right? Those who have assembled here with a duty, with a desire to fight, right? And then, Krishna does that. And then Krishna plays a little trick and tells him that, okay, look at the Kurus. And he says that on purpose, look at the Kurus, because he wants him to realize that these are his relatives that he's planning to kill there, right? So when Arjun looks at them, then there is a transformation that comes over Arjun, and which can be seen starting from 28 number verse, and we see that overwhelmed with compassion 27, and then 28 onwards till a couple of verses here says that my body is quivering, my mouth is drying up. Raise your hands if ever your mouth dried up because of anxiety. Did it? Only Archana had anxiety in life. Nobody else had anxiety. Varshana, no anxiety, never mouth dried up. Raise your hand if you had experience. You can raise your physical hand. I can see you. Okay, Simi has anxiety. Okay, Varshana has that too. Okay, so here, yes. So the same thing is also happening to Arjun over there, right? And then on after that, then his body starts to quiver. So body can shiver from cold, from excitement, from grief. There are various reasons why one's body can shiver. And so here, his body was trembling. His hair was standing on his hand, and the bow Gandiva was slipping from his hand. And so this is exactly, he's losing his complete personality, because Arjuna was known as the bearer of the Gandiva, the mighty Arjuna who's supposed to take care of the Gandiva. And that same Gandiva, the war has not even started, and Arjuna is feeling like that, right? And then the first seed of compassion comes into Arjuna. So 28 to 30 are talking about his, how he's moved towards compassion from how he had started in the beginning on wanting to have the fight. Because he says that I do not see, and I can see only causes of misfortune, O Krishna, O killer of the Kesi demon, right? So here, by the use of the word Kesi demon, he's actually pointing to Krishna, and he's saying that, you killed the Kesi demon, but you know what? Those were demons. He was a demon. Now here, you're asking me to kill my relatives, Bhishma Pitamaha, my teacher Dronacharya. There's no comparison there, right? So Krishna, you have to remember this, that when you come to killing, you have to kill the bad and not the good. And you're asking me to do this over here. So then, from compassion, then his thoughts move over to thoughts of enjoyment. Because now he's saying, I don't see how any good can come out of this. And then he also says that, nor my dear Krishna desire any subsequent kingdom or happiness. So now he's craving for some happiness, right? Like we are Sachidanand Vigraha, so we're always looking for happiness, and so is Arjuna. So he's looking for happiness, right? So 20, so 31 onwards, he will start talking about enjoyment and give some very, strong suggestions and reasons as to why he should not fight, right? So then he says, 32 to 35, the whole bunch of verses is talking about what's good it is to have a kingdom, that if my teachers, my fathers, my sons, grandfathers, uncle, maternal uncles, and fathers-in-law you name it, they are there. That relationship is over there, right? They're all standing before me. right? And why should I wish to kill them even though they might otherwise kill him, right? So there's still that layer of that streak of compassion is running through him. And then he says, no, well, what use is all that? What will we enjoy? Because for enjoyment, you need others around you, especially when there is opulence, right? And then, in the next verse onwards, he starts going into the route of fear, the route of fear that, if I do this thing, even if I take it for my own enjoyment, right? If I do this thing, then there's going to be sinful actions, sinful reactions for me because I'm going to kill my teachers, right? So, and then here also he uses the thing, oh Krishna, husband of the goddess of fortune. So then he addresses him as the husband of goddess of fortune, which means that, well, you are the one who takes care of people having fortune, good fortune or not. And now you're asking me to do something which is a guarantee that there will be misfortune because you're going to kill the elders, your teachers, right? So it's all wrong things that you're doing against the Shastric injunctions. So, what can any good come out of it? So he's there. There's that fear is there, right? So after going over there, right, then he's come back into a little bit more grounded level. And then from verse number 40, all the way till the end, now he's talking about the consequences of this war, not just towards Arjuna, but the consequences of fighting that war, what the effect is going to be for all the other people who are there. And which means not just the people who are there on the battlefield, they will of course die or live, right? Or win or die. He's not talking about that. He's talking about those who are left back, those who are at the home, the old people, the small children, and the women, right? So whichever party is going to win, if the Pandavas are going to win the war, then that is fine. But then at the cost of what? At the cost of so many women becoming widows, at the cost of so many children becoming orphans, and so on and so forth, or losing the father, and so on and so forth. So he's talking about, and once that happened, the old people are going to die because nobody's going to take care of them. And so the women will be left, uncared for. So there's going to be total disaster in the family and in the society as a whole, because the elders who are there, like the teachers and all, I'm killing them. So who's going to tell us the right traditions to follow, right? And the little kids who are there, they will grow up with so much of resentment towards us because they will remember as the ones we killed their fathers. They'll remember as the ones who are responsible for their condition in life. So Arjun gives us all that. And then towards the end, right? Towards the end, we see that he leaves everything, right? He cast aside his bow and arrows and sat down on the back of the chariot, his mind overwhelmed with grief. So he's completely overwhelmed with grief. And that's why in this chapter, this chapter is sometimes also called as Arjun Vishad Yogo Nama. So Vishad, he's there, complete distress is there that is overcoming him. So this was the condition of Arjuna. This was the condition of Arjuna at the end of chapter number 1. And then we go over to chapter number 2. So we have to remember that this is a conversation, Bhagavad Gita is a conversation that is happening between Arjuna and Krishna on the battlefield of Kurukshetra. And so it's a conversation. It's not a discourse. It's not a chapter as we are going through Bhagavad Gita, chapter 1, chapter 2, etc. Right? Krishna just spoke. And Arjuna asked some questions, or Arjuna said something and Krishna responded. So it's kind of like a dialogue, right? With most of the time, Krishna is speaking, except for chapter 1, where he doesn't speak. As such, like Sri Bhagwan Vacha, like that, he doesn't say. And then this segregation into chapters was done later on by Vyasadeva when he was compiling the Bhagavad Gita as part of the Mahabharata. So he then segregates the chapters to kind of give us the thing, just like how we have just now segregated the chapter 1 into various sections, right? Similarly, he segregated the entire Bhagavad Gita and gave us the chapters. And then, of course, within the chapter segregation comes from our acharyas, right? And then we learn from our teachers like that as to how that goes. So then if you go over to chapter number 2 of Bhagavad Gita, so then I said, Arjuna is so full of compassion, his eyes of mind is distressed, his eyes are full of tears. So now in chapter 2, Krishna starts to talk about, and then he starts with, because he starts scolding him and tries to jolt him out of that. And he says, you don't do this, don't indulge in impotence, don't go down that route. You are an Aryan, you should not be doing that. But then Arjuna's doubts still start coming in, right? So my question to you is, doubting is a function of what? From which part of our body do we doubt? Which part of the body doubts? Okay, so we have got 3 answers here. We have got 4 answers, 5 answers, and all of the answers are mine. And actually, doubting is when you doubt something, right? For example, I take an apple. Should I eat it or should I not eat it? So there's a doubt that has come into my head, right? So there's a doubt. So this means that I'm trying to now, analyze the effects of eating apple. Why should I be asking that question in the first place? Doubt is a question. Why should I be even asking that question in the first place? Because now I'm trying to see, if I eat apple, this is what's going to happen. If I don't eat the apple, this is going to happen, right? An ice cream. If I eat that ice cream, this is what's going to happen. If I don't eat the ice cream, this is what's going to happen. So I'm trying to find the difference between the two acts, eating it or not eating it. I'm discriminating between the good and the bad effects. Maybe good effect, hunger will be satisfied. Bad effect, blood sugar will rise, and so on and so forth, right? So I'm discriminating between the two. And discrimination is a function of the intelligence. Mind is passive in the sense, or mind can be said to be, it's in the mode of goodness. All that it does is it presents the thoughts of all kinds and all varieties. Right? There is a thought that eating the ice cream is going to pacify your hunger. Another thought, it's going to raise your blood sugar. Another thought, you can catch a cold, so on and so forth, right? So mind just presents the thoughts to you. So mind is in the mode of goodness. Although we say that the mind is our enemy, right? And but if you look at the modes of material nature, all from that perspective, mind is in the mode of goodness, because all that it does is just present the thoughts to you. They come in a stream, and that's all. Right? It's the intelligence which is in the mode of passion, is actively working. Is this right? Is it wrong? This I should accept this thought. I should reject this thought. Present it to the soul, like that, as a recommendation. Okay, so doubting is a function of the intelligence. Doubting, right? So now these doubts have come in the mind of Arjuna, in the sense that more thoughts are going to come, but the instigating or the starting point is the intelligence, which is trying to weigh this one and that one, and that's what Arjuna is doing. And he has weighed his intelligence, looking at all the thoughts that crossed his mind, right? That we covered in chapter number 1, which is that how can I kill my parents and teachers? How will I ever enjoy them? Are we not going to get sinful reactions? Right? These are doubts. Or what about what's going to happen when everybody's dead? What's going to happen to the Lupta Pindodaka Kriya, all these traditional family projects, all they're going to be destroyed. What's going to happen? These are doubts, 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 and doubts. Right? So his intelligence is actively working. And then when Krishna tells him and jols him and says, don't do that. You are in a battlefield. You're supposed to fight. Why are you thinking all this nonsense, right? But his doubts are still continuing, right? So then he says, how can I counteract with arrows in battle men like Bhishma and Drona who are worthy of my worship? And then he says, it'll be better for me. It'll be better for me to live in this world by begging. So he's a Kshatriya, but he wants to swing the pendulum into the other direction and says that, it's better for me to just live by begging. Now, Kshatriyas are not supposed to do that. So Kshatriyas are supposed to administer. That's their Varnashram Dharma. That's what they're supposed to do. And then again, here's a doubt again that comes into his mind. Nor do we know which is much better, to be conquering them or being conquered by them. Now he is confused. He's confused about that. And then after so much of confusion, something good comes out of it. And that is that Arjuna surrenders to the teacher and he says, Sishyasteham shadi mam tvam prapannam, that I am your student. I'm a soul surrendered unto you and please instruct me. Now, when you say that, please instruct me, then he's also coming up and he's saying that, I find no means to drive away this grief. So he's surrendered, like helpless. I don't know what to do. All my senses are being dried up, right? And then he's comparing and he says, I will not be able to dispel this grief that is coming. I will not be able to dispel it, even with a prosperous, unrivaled kingdom on earth with sovereignty like the demigods, or, here or in the heavens, either places. Because in the previous chapter, while, uh, um, Arjuna was thinking about all this, he was also talking about that, if I die, then I will enjoy here, or if I die, then I will enjoy in the heavens, or if I win, then I'll enjoy here. So that enjoyment thing is always there, right? But then he's saying that even in either of the two cases, if I go to heaven or stay here on this earth, what use is of all this, right? And then comes the most important moment, and that is Sanjay said, having spoken thus, Arjuna chastised the enemies, told Krishna, Govinda, I shall not fight, and fell silent. Now, which is the most powerful phrase that you see in this verse, which is conducive to learning? So just take out your notepads and tell me, what do you think is the most conducive for learning? What do you think? Which particular verse? Which part? Which phrase from here? Which activity of Arjuna do you think is most conducive for his learning? And we are looking at text number 9. All right, so we have got two words for he fell silent, remaining silent, he fell silent, and that is the correct answer, right? So for instruction to begin, to allow Krishna to speak, Arjun first has to stop speaking. He has spoken enough in first chapter. So now after he surrenders to Krishna, he is now willing to listen. And it's very, very important to understand and to observe how this entire body is constructed and our senses are constructed, right? So there's a sense of taste, right? There's a sense of taste, so you enjoy. 1 gulab jamun, fantastic. 2, very nice. 3, continues to be nice. 4, I'm getting full. 5, I want to throw up. 6, I hate gulab jamuns. So you see your sense of taste and sense of enjoyment dwindles, as you have more and more of that particular object of the sense. Whatever is the object of the sense enjoyment, there's a limit, right? There's a limit to how much you can taste. There's a limit to how much you can speak. After some time, your tongue will be tired and we will keep quiet, right? Or if I like a touch, right? If I like just touch, if I keep on stroking and I like it. If I do it for 1 hour, there'll be rashes and there'll be swelling. So there's a limit to how much, you can enjoy from the sense of touch, from the sense of taste, talking, walking, and then also smelling. I mean, as far as smelling goes, it's amazing that there are nerves or buds in our nose which actually they smell a good smell, and after some time they get fatigued and they stop smelling it. So there's a limit also to how much of a good scent can you enjoy. Like if you put a perfume, then after some time you stop smelling the perfume on yourself. What is the reason for that, right? Because your nose is no longer active. That's how it's built, like only this much and no more on that, right? So these senses they've got a limit. Also on the eyes, like if you're watching a television or if you're watching anything, after some time your eyes will close, right? So tiredness will come in. But there is one sense that we have, which is a sense of hearing, and there is no limit to how much can you hear, right? Like if I give you a book of 1,000 pages, if you read it up, sometimes the eyes will hurt from reading too much, right? They might get dried if you're watching it on a screen. But as far as the ear is goes, there's no such thing as, how much more can I hear? You can keep on pouring. And as Vaishnav Kapoor says, your ears are shaped like a funnel. So ready to get, more and more and more information. And this is the only sense that doesn't get tired. And also, doesn't stop working even when you are sleeping. And that is the reason that when you're sleeping, somebody takes your name, you're able to get up because that sense is still active. So this is what Arjuna has done. He's now ready. He's opened up his receptacles and he's ready to take everything in. So after, he surrenders, then, he has a little bit of doubt. He expresses those doubts over there, right? And then, Krishna is very happy that somebody has surrendered, and because now he will tell, to his friend and his cousin, Arjuna. And then Krishna, in the next few verses which are there, he will give him jnana. And that is why we say this contents of Bhagavad Gita summarized, because he's talking about jnana here, right? Jnana yoga. That you go and get the real knowledge. The real knowledge, a lot of people do not even know the real knowledge. And the real knowledge is that you are a soul. The knowledge that there is a soul, that itself is not there, right? For so many. So go and get the real knowledge. That is what Jnana Yoga is. And then over the next several verses, Krishna actually goes and explains to him the construction of the soul, right? Gives the properties of the soul. Can you list one property each? One of you, just give me one property of the soul. What do you think are the properties of the soul that are listed? Khyati Mataji says soul is indestructible. It is changeless, says Aruni Mataji. Correct. Eternal and everlasting. Khyati Mataji again. Okay, if you have given one, then just, let others give more. Can be killed, yes. Okay. Right? And then eternal means that you can also bake in the understanding that when you say eternal means it's unborn, right? So it's unborn and it doesn't get killed, it doesn't get withered, right? So on and so forth, right? No weapons can cut it, no air can dry it, no fire can burn it, and so on and so forth. He's giving that knowledge. Then he also gives the knowledge. Dehesmin yatha deve dehe kaumaram yovanam jara tatha dehantar praptir dhiras tatran muviyati. He's explaining what death is, right? He also talks about how you change clothes, yatha, right? About how you change your clothes, and you easily step from one set of clothes to another set of clothes. Similarly, this body is also a cloth, a clothing for the soul, and the soul can leave this one piece of cloth and go and take another one, right? Like that. And then in the purports, we also hear about the measurement of the soul, and as Sukuna Mataji is pointing about. And what was the measurement of the soul? How big was the soul? How big is the soul defined in the Shastras? So we got two answers, and an easy way of remembering that is, of course, we can remember the tip of the hair. That is easy part. But then the fraction is a little difficult to remember. How much is it? Is it 1,000? Is it 10,000 or 100 or what? So it is 100 into 100, right? So 100 into 100 becomes 10,000. So 1 by 10,000th part of the 1 by 10,000th of the tip of the hair. It's said to be smaller than that, right? And then, of course, we have the very famous verse that we have been all reciting. न जायते म्रियते वा कदाचिन् नायं भूत्वा भविता वा न भूया अजो नित्यः शाश्वतोऽयं पुराणो न हन्यते हन्यमाने शरीरे. Okay, so that was your homework to memorize it. So if you haven't done the memorization, then by Sunday, please make sure that you do. Right? So so Krishna goes on and explains and gives lots of properties about the soul. So he's giving him what is known as the jnana. So So through the purpose, through the mechanism of giving him gyan, Krishna is telling Arjuna that fight. Because as a soul, nahanyate hanyamane sharire. If the sharir is dead of your relative or your own sharir, the soul is still going to live. So what's the lamentation? Why are you crying? Why are you distressed? No. So he explains all this, all this, all this. He will go on. Soul is invincible. If you think it's not okay, if you think that soul dies, then also he gives that explanation that fine. If something's going to die, then that's what's the big deal? Why do don't lament? Let it die. So he'll go on, right? And then cast the verdict there that, the soul is never going to die. So you don't grieve. You don't grieve for anybody. Like that, he's saying that, and which means that fight. Okay? So then, all right, he said, if you don't understand from the Gyan perspective, and obviously Krishna is having a one-on-one conversation with Arjuna. He's sitting in the chariot. He's looking back. He's the chariot driver. He's looking back at Arjuna and he's explaining. Now, obviously, he can see Arjuna's body language. So Arjuna has not got it. Arjuna is not fully convinced. So now Krishna says, okay, I'm going to try from another angle and explain to him from another angle. And now he's going to explain it from the karma perspective. And what karma perspective? Karma kanda perspective. So there's a difference, Karma kanda and karma are two different things. Karma kanda is when you do something, keeping the results for yourself, keeping those things in mind, your own enjoyment in mind when you're doing certain activities. That is known as karma kandi activities, right? When you do actions and you do it for Krishna, that is called karma yoga. So he's bringing in the concept of karma yoga also, but starting with a lower level. Karma kandi activities will slowly gravitate and get elevated to karma yoga in due course of time, right? So he's telling him in the next verses that are there, 7 or 8 verses, then he says, okay, now you are a Kshatriya. You are to fight on the grounds of, the religious principles are there. It's your duty to fight. And then he's saying that if you don't do your duty, what's going to happen? People are going to say bad things about you. They are not going to say that Arjuna had compassion for the souls, compassion for the teachers and grandfathers and uncles and maternal uncles and so on and so forth. They're just going to say that you chickened out. You saw a much bigger Kaurav army, you chickened out and you came out, right? So now he's telling in Karma Kandi activities, if you don't do your activities, if you don't do your duty, then you're going to incur sin. So he's talking about cause and the effect, right? The results of your action. And you are going to incur sin on that. So it's all about me. If I don't do it, I'm going to incur sin. And if I do that, right? If I don't do it, also the generals are going to say bad things about me. Unkind words is what he uses in this person, right? And then he's dangling the carrot. He's saying, but if you die in the war, then you'll reach the heavenly planets. So you can enjoy. After all, in first chapter, he was talking about how can I enjoy this and that, right? So he's saying that, you do fight for the sake of fighting, neither concerning happiness nor gain victory. So he says either one of the two that you do, right? Either of the cases, you just fight for karma kandi activities from there. So he's talking about karma kanda, right? And then there is a little bit of, karma yoga. He's saying, okay, do it just as a matter of duty. Don't think about the results. Karmanevadhikaraste ma phaletu kadachana. That big verse is coming over there, right? So we talked about Jnana Yoga, Karma Yoga, right? So these are the things that will be covered, subsequently in the rest of the chapters. And that is why this chapter is known as Content of the Gita Summarized, okay? So after having told him about the Gyan, from the Gyan perspective, also from the Karma Kandi perspective, now he's coming to the Buddhi Yoga, intelligence or, devotional perspective. Buddhi Yoga is also known as devotional service. So he's talking to him about that, right? So now he's saying, I have described this knowledge through analytical studies, Sankhya Yoga, which is Jnana Yoga. I've told you all that, brought in Karma Kandi activities also, but now I'm going to tell you something more, right? That I'm going to tell you how to work without focusing on the fruitive results. You are working for somebody else. And now he's saying, he's bringing in devotional service, And he says that, if you do that, there is no loss or diminution. And a little that you do in your devotional service will get carried over to the next life. So, um, and so he's telling him about uh, everlasting gains that you can have by doing something that Krishna wants you to do. Because if you look at from the Karma Kandi perspective, right, if you fight here to preserve your reputation, it was your reputation. When you die, in any case, it's gone, right? Or if you die in the war and you get elevated to the heavenly planets, after some time, you will be again coming back to this land. So that is also not an everlasting thing. So now he's telling him the good, everlasting things, and he's going to tell him that, neha vikramo nashosti pratyavayo na vidyate swalpam api asyat. So he's saying that even if you do a little bit of progress in the devotional service, trayate mahato bhayat, it will free you from the biggest fear that anybody can have, and that is to fall down into the animal kingdom. That is the biggest fear that one should have. Right? So then he's now going to tell about Buddhi Yoga, right? So how, he's saying Vedas are there, flowery languages are there, all that is not good. You should use your intelligence, right? You use your intelligence and go for the source. Go for the source. And what he said here, he said that all purposes served by a small well can at once be served by a great reservoir of water. Similarly, all the purposes of Vedas can be served to one who knows the purpose behind them. So just don't look at the Vedas from a Karma Kandi perspective that they give me this and that and this luxury and that enjoyment. Instead of that, look at the source of the Vedas. And subsequently in chapter 15, we know, which is Sukumal Radhe Mataji's favorite verse, right? And I'm sure it's many of you have that as a favorite verse. He says, Vedes ja sarver aham eva vedyo. So Vedanta krit vedavid eva chaham. So he says, I have created the Vedas. So he's the purpose behind the Vedas. So you go for that. Use your intelligence and go for that instead of going for the low hanging fruit, right? And staying in a temporary position, you go for the long hanging fruit and get things on a more permanent basis over there, right? So then he's continuing out, and then he says, this is a very important verse number 49. And he says, Durena hi avaram karma buddhi yoga dhananjaya. Buddho sharanamandiccha kripana phalahetavaha. So it's a very nice distinction that Krishna is making, 2.49. And he says, O Dhananjay, keep all abominable activities far distance by doing devotional service, and in that consciousness surrender unto the Lord. Those who want to enjoy the fruits of their work are misers. So who is a miser? A miser is somebody who does things for himself or for herself. That is known as a miser. Okay. So verse number 49, very again he's saying that, use your intelligence, discriminate, right? So in the beginning, we did that exercise on what is intelligence and how do you discriminate. So discriminate between this is wrong, so you stay away from it. How do I stay away from it? Engage in devotional service. Now there were other means also that Krishna had told him on how you can stay away. He had given him the example of the tortoise, and then all those kind of things are going to come pretty soon over there. And then he's selling you, and he's telling you what's in it for you. Why should I do devotional service? He was in chapter number 1, he was talking about papameva dashreyasman, hatvatan atatayina. So he said, if he kill these aggressors, but because they are our relatives, I will incur sin. Now here, Krishna is telling him that a man engaged in devotional service rids himself of both good and bad reactions, even in this life. Therefore, strive for yoga, which is the art of all work. So we can be doing all kinds of activities, but then you have to connect those activities to Krishna. And that is the art of all work, the art of working. Okay? And then he's telling about that, other sages also have done all this, they go back. right? And then once you pursue devotional service and indulge in the activities that are there in devotional service, then what he's saying is that, this delusion that is there, this is me and this is mine, all that will come out. You will come out of that forest of delusion. So he's using some similes here, right? And then in verse number 53, through Buddhi Yoga, through using your intelligence, he's telling Arjuna to reach a particular stage, which is known as Sthita Prajna stage. And Sthita Prajna, he says, when your mind is no longer disturbed by the flowery language of the Vedas, and when it remains fixed in the trance of self-realization, then you will have attained the divine consciousness. So the mind is, he says, mind is no longer disturbed by the flowery language, because the Vedas tell you such beautiful descriptions of the heavenly planets, all the things that you can enjoy over there, what you can do to enjoy even here. So there's a flowery language is saying your mind should not be disturbed by that. Now we have done a verse, and this is a question for you. We have done a verse on how we have done a verse on how Krishna uses another example, a few examples actually, uses of mind being disturbed, and he does some analogies. So you remember what analogies we have done on how the mind gets disturbed? Any example you remember of how mind can be disturbed? He gave a very famous analogy, and I will give you, yes, Khyati's almost there. I'll give you a hint that we memorized, or if not memorized, at least we practiced reciting this verse. Those of you who attend the Sunday morning class, we did this. Starts with an A. Aruni is there, yes. Apuryamanam achila pratishtam, right? So the example that he gave was that your mind should be like, that, although incessant desires keep on coming to your mind, but if you stay calm, like how the ocean stays calm, right? Then you will be happy and you'll be peaceful there, right? And then, of course, we also talked about that when you're trying to keep your mind still, then sometimes the desires will come and they will sweep you away from your activity, just as a strong wind can take away a boat, which is flying on the ocean. Okay, so he's talking about Sthita Prajna, staying equal and balanced and equipoised in happiness and distress and so on and so forth, and stay there. And then he's saying yes, and then fight. So from Jnana Yoga, he said, fight because you're a soul. Right? Karam Kandi, fight because you'll get goodies. If you win, you get goodies. If you lose, you get goodies. So it's a win-win situation. You fight. And from Buddhi Yoga also, he's saying, okay, now you fight because that is what you're supposed to do. Right? So going through all these stages, right? All the way up to 72, you have to fight. He's telling Arjuna, this is what your duty is, right? You stay balanced. As part of your duty, if you have to do something which doesn't appeal to you, you stay balanced. Be like the ocean, it stays balanced. Be a Sthita Prajna, right? Stay like that, be balanced. And so the main thing so this is all good, we understand that because this is post, but Arjuna is there in the middle of the war. He's looking at his relatives. He's already gone through that. Vepatushya sharire me roma harshasya jayate gandivam samsrate hastrat takchata paridahyate. So he's saying that, the gandiv is, falling from my hand, my fever, I've got fever, and so on and so forth. He's telling all that. So his state of mind is that. And now Krishna has given him so much of philosophy. Right? He's given him Jnana Yoga, Karma Yoga, and Buddhi Yoga. He's done all that, but in the heart of his heart, he does not want to fight. And so wherever our heart is, wherever we put our heart, the heart, the Shraddha is going to take you there. So he then goes and looks at this particular verse, text number 49, where it says, O Dhananjaya, keep all abominable activities far distant by devotional service, and in that consciousness surrender unto the Lord. Those who want to enjoy the fruits of the work are misers. So now you can interpret and say, okay, so that is good. So all abominable activities far distant. So killing my parents and uncles and teachers and grandfathers, this is abominable activity. So I have to stay away from that. Okay, by devotional service. Okay, I was talking about like I will live my life by begging, but this is even better. I'll just do devotional service, get up in the morning, do my Mangal Aarti, I will chant the whole day, cook some prasadam, distribute prasadam, have it, go to sleep. That's what I'm going to do. That's what Arjuna is thinking. That I'll do that. In that consciousness, surrender unto the Lord. Yeah, I will surrender. I've already surrendered. I made you my teacher. Those who want to enjoy the fruits of the work, yeah, I don't want to enjoy this or that, right? So I can, if I fight the war, Krishna just now told me that if I win the war, I will enjoy, and if I lose the war, I go to heavens and I enjoy. And now this is saying that, well, I should not be talking about enjoyment. So having said that, keeping abominable things away, surrendering into the Lord, and then not enjoying the fruits of the labor, let me do this, let me not fight. So now he's getting confused. He's understanding that, Buddhi Yoga is using your intelligence and understanding that there is God and understanding all these things means that he should not fight. Right? So he's in that confused state of mind when we come to chapter number 3, which is called, what is chapter number 3 called? Chapter number 3 is called Karma Yoga. Right? And then he says, Oh Janardhan, O Keshapa, why do you want to engage me in this ghastly warfare if you think that intelligence is better than fruited work? Right? So trying to do some work and focusing on the results, instead of doing that, I sit back, I look at everything, I realize soul and the body, I realize the consequences, I realize there is Paramatma, I realize what's my duty is, what am I supposed to do? So he's confused and he will ask that confusion. He'll ask that question because he's a student. It's his duty to ask questions. And then Krishna will answer that in chapter number 3. Okay, so this is where, the connection between chapter number 2 and the chapter number 3 is coming from that crucial verse, which is verse number 49 here, where he's saying, Durena hiavaram karma. So he's saying, keep all abominable activities far distance. So from here, his confusion is coming, and Krishna will set it right in the subsequent chapters that are going to come up over here, like that. Okay. So having said that, gone through that, we will. I'll open this up for the next 13 minutes, and we will do. We'll have a reflection sessions. Anything that you found good, any questions that came to your mind, anything you were dying to talk all these days and didn't get a chance to talk. Here's your chance to talk about it. And you can unmute yourself and speak, or you can raise your hands. That's more organized. And we can take it from there. If you want to post your questions on the chat list, I'm monitoring it on the chat list too. Aruni has raised her hand, so go ahead, Aruni Mataji.
No, it was just a quick reflection on, the first line of chapter 3, where you said, if intelligence is better than fruitive action. And I was just thinking that, a lot of the times with the intellectualists and those who want to discuss, it's sort of an easy route as well, where people just want to intellectualize and discuss. And it's sort of an excuse as well to not take action, or not to follow right conduct, or just to avoid action for whatever reason. I mean, it just struck me at that time when I was just reading that. It was just something that just passed through my mind. So it's not necessarily because, the person might think that, it's better than fruitive action, but it's just a lazy way out to intellectualize rather than actually perform action.
Yes, that's a very, very, very important point, because sometimes we can do that even on the path of devotional service. we can just sit down and say, okay, yeah, chanting is my duty, so I will chant, and I don't care whether there comes some time or others in the family are waiting and I have got some responsibilities over there. Devotional service involves a lot of balance to be made and some very practical decisions to be taken. Yeah. Yeah. Thanks for bringing that point. Oh, yeah. Sukomal Radhe Mataji. Yes, go ahead.
I didn't quite understand text 26, Shraddha Mataji, where it says that if you think that the soul will always be born and die forever, you still have no reason to lament. What does that mean?
So after first he tells him that, and Prabhupada explained that very nicely in a purport, and we can go to the purport there. So first he has explained that, the soul doesn't die. So don't be afraid of dying in the world.
Yeah.
Or if you're thinking that, it's a cyclical thing, that you're born and dead, born and dead, born and dead. So why are you worried? Like winters come, right? So when the winters come, the winter is born, right? In our lives. I'm taking an example. Then winters go, we don't lament. Oh, winters have gone, because it's going to come again. If you like winters, it's going to come again. We just suffer through the summer season. So it's a cyclical thing. And so and let me bring up the purport for that. And purport, Prabhupada gives a very nice example, I think in this one only, where he talks about
because here it's saying the soul will be born if you think that the soul is born and dies. So
yeah. So he's giving that, well, if you think that what I'm proposing, that it doesn't die, if you have doubts and you say no, I think the soul dies, then okay, in that situation, number B, what's going to happen to you? In the war, you'll be killed and the soul will also die. But then your theory is saying the soul will be born again. So where's the loss? You'll be born again. Like that, right? So here he's saying that, so many tens of chemical, where is that? He gives a very nice example of, having a building. So you have a building, you use cement, etc., to construct the building, and then you demolish. Then what happens? You get the cement back again, and then you can use the cement same again and build the whole building. So there's no problem over there, if you think like that. So that's what he's saying, that if you think.
Oh yeah. Here he's saying, if there was no rebirth for the soul, then you have no reason to be afraid. Okay, thank you, Shraddha Mataji.
Any other thoughts? Any other comments? Anything that struck you here? Should we call it a day then? No more questions? You're good on time? Yes or yes?
Mataji, biggest Mataji.
Okay. All right, bring it on. Yeah.
So, Mataji, when we were finishing chapter 17, why did we not go to chapter 18? Why did we come to chapter 2?
Because going to chapter 6 and 17 was a digression. We had started reading the Bhagavad Gita from the beginning of COVID. We did chapter 1 and chapter 2, part of chapter 2. And then because we were doing a Chad daily, chapter of Gita daily we were doing that. So then as part of reading the Chad, then after the Chad was done, we started going in a haphazard manner, picking up one verse, any verse at a time, and just going into that rather than going sequentially, in a sequential manner, right? So when we do those kind of activities, we will never get it right. It's a proper, there is structured way of going through this. So go through these chapters one at a time, understand what is 2, then understand what is 3, understand what is 4, go through the flow, read it as Krishna taught it to Krishna. So that was the reason we stopped doing that.
Oh,
back to 2, picked up the threads from where we left off. Yeah, we left off. Now you can safely say that we have done every verse in chapter 1 and chapter 2. Right now, as we go to chapter 3, it's going to take us some 42, about 42 weeks, less than that. But we will consider we have done that, right? So it's very important that for us to be able to also measure it, because if you don't measure things, then you can't improve them. Right? So if you can't continue the Chad route and pick up any verses haphazardly, after 10 years also, you won't be able to say that I have completed 16, right? And I don't know whether you noticed it, but we were also taking the same verse over and over and over again and again. because there was that free for all thing. Like, today I can, somebody asked at number 10, I can choose to listen or not listen. And then 3 days later, I can ask the same question that were addressed in the class 3 days ago because, I didn't listen. So there's a free thing. So whenever there's too much of freedom, then, it's not good for specifically for this kind of readings. And then for Shastric readings, one thing also I wanted to emphasize here is that the way Shastras are taught and the way material things are taught are very different. For example, especially in terms of adult learning, when we talk about how do we teach adults, right? So we kind of try to use a little bit of the materialistic thing. And so in the material world, when adults come to a particular class, they bring in a lot of their experience, right? Number one. Then they're always looking at, what is it there for me? What's in it for me, right? You're teaching me this thing, but how can I apply it back in my life, right? And but then when it comes to Shastras, you will notice that Shastras are taught in a very different manner. They almost like we are teaching it to the kids, and which is that the teacher recites the words and then one shloka and recites one shloka and he says, okay, like for example, if you take this particular verse that we are looking at, atha if, everybody will say atha if. It's like, what, am I in kindergarten or what? But the way this is taught, it's taught by rote, it's taught by listening. And that's why the very important thing that I pointed out over there was that Arjuna fell silent. It's very, 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 very important, right? To do that. In adult learning, sometimes you might even, as an adult, you might even go to a class and 95% of the topic you knew, and there was only 5% that you gained, and then 90% you gave. But then was it worth the money there, right? Maybe you're in the wrong class if that is happening to you there. So the way Vedic Shastras are learned are very, very different. I mean, tad vidhi paripatena pariprashnena sevaya updeshyanti te jnanam jnanina tatra darshana. It's such a contrast to the way we learn material things, right? Tad vidhi pari, we're talking about, do seva. And I remember, and then without any questions. This is also a very thing. This is the surrender. When he did the surrender, Arjuna did the surrender. Shishya steham shadi mam tom prapannam. So he's doing that surrender to the Lord. And he's saying that surrender means I will listen to whatever you're saying and I will do. And then, of course, there were intelligent questions he asked. It's not blind faith. He asked questions, but in the end, he did surrender to Krishna like that. So that thing, and that's a very Oriental way of learning. You see that. When I remember watching a movie which had to do with one of the Chinese martial arts, and this boy wants to go and learn martial art from a teacher who's very, very renowned. He's the expert in that martial art. And he goes to the teacher, and the teacher doesn't speak much. And teacher just says, do this. And what does he ask him to do is he says, okay, here's my car. And you take 2 sponges, and I want you to scrub the car like this. And I want you to scrub the car like this. And you scrub the car till I tell you not to. And so he, does it. One day morning, gets up, teacher says, scrub. He scrubs till the evening, teacher says, stop. And it just keeps on happening for 1 day, 2 days, 3 days. This guy is completely, frustrated as to what is going on. I mean, I came here to be a kung fu fighter or whatever that fight was. I didn't come here to become a car washer. What is my teacher telling me to do? So anyway, he persevered, and which is a very good thing for a student to do. And at the end of the 1 week, then the teacher asked him to stop. And then he says, that one of the things as part of this fight is that you should have very strong wrists. And what I was doing all these days was I was strengthening your wrist by giving you this job of, washing the car this way, this way, this way. So both the hands you were doing it. So it's an amazing Oriental style of teaching. But because we have been brought up in the other Western style, so we miss that. And so sometimes while teaching Shastra also, we will, inculcate a little bit of that also and then try to do a mix.
It says, listen submissively to the spiritual master and with submission.
Yeah, with submission. That's very important because otherwise people can get argumentative. And intellect is like that, you can challenge. And some of the things that you really need to admire and appreciate is that Prabhupada came to America with so much of heavy Bengali accent when he's teaching English. He's speaking English, but look at the American boys and girls, right, who were there. They did not doubt that, even despite all those difficulties that they had. Look at the faith and the surrender that they had for Srila Prabhupada, and how nicely they took to everything that he told. When you have that kind of a surrender, then you have the kind of disciples that Prabhupada has, And they always say that, this one, Dhruva was a disciple of Narad Muni, and Dhruva learned, because they say that Narad Muni is such a fantastic teacher. So sometimes as students, we might just say that, we doubt the teacher and we say, the teacher is not good. I mean, if I had Narad Muni as my teacher, I would have progressed in devotional service. Like, yeah, but you have to be a disciple like Dhruv Maharaj also, like that. So it's a two-way thing, right? So it's not easy. Shishyaste ham shadi mam tam prapana is not an easy thing. Okay, Varshana for the last one.
Yes. No, Mataji, I was just thinking that Guru Maharaj also, you see, said that in one of his lectures, that when he saw the Back to Godhead magazine, and he saw Srila Prabhupada, and he said that, yes, this is my teacher. So I mean, strong faith he had by just seeing it and reading Back to Godhead. So that was wonderful. You see, I was just contemplating on this, you see, when you said that,
Yes.
when Mataji said that, listen to your spiritual master with submissiveness. So one has to have full faith.
Yes.
And then only we can. Another thing, Mataji, I was just thinking, we talk about in 71 shloka, the false ego we talked about. Mataji, most of the people, they read Bhagavad Gita, but when it comes to their personal life, when they in the personal dealings, day-to-day dealing, false ego doesn't go from them somewhere or the other. It is seen, Mataji.
Yeah. So quick short answer, because I'm over my time. I need to go. Quick short answer is that false ego is the last thing to go. It's the false ego that makes you think you are the body. So all of us are under the influence of false ego right now. Yeah. So when he's saying false ego in Bhagavad Gita means that when you are falsely thinking about I am, right? Ego means I am. True ego is I am a servant of the Lord. I'm a spirit and I'm a servant of the Lord. That's a true ego. And the false ego is when I think I'm this body. And which I was saying the other day is such a horrible situation. It's like you have lost your identity card. You don't even know who I am. Right?
Right.
I remember once there was a small child in my family, and I'm forgetting who it was, but a small child, and then how there are big boys in the family, they will have fun with the little one. And so you're like, what's your name? So my name is Bablu. And then the elder brother will say, or the old cousin will say, no, your name is not Bablu, your name is Rohit. And somebody will say, oh no, your name is not Rohit, your name is Samir. Like that they will say, right? And I still remember the child got so confused. After some time, the child turned to the mom and said, Mummy, main kaun hu? Completely confused, like, Mom, who am I? But the thing is, like, now we are laughing, but we all are in that situation. We don't know who we are. Yeah. Every time we change a body, we think I'm that one. So I'm a Bablu and I'm a Rohit and a Samir.
But I think Varshana Mataji means that even though we read the Gita, we still all have egos. Maybe not the false ego, but we all have egos.
Oh, yes. And ego will go away. Yes. And then ego was defined as a demonic quality in chapter 16. The ego will go away from devotional service, and inculcating humility, staying around people who are humble and learning from them. Humility. Yeah. Sorry, I went on a different track. Yeah. All righty. Having said that, thank you so much. I'm happy to be back again. So tomorrow I've got grandma duty, so I won't be able to take to have the class Srimad Bhagavatam. Saturday morning I'm reading the Ramayana. I got the good fortune to read the Ramayana in our Saturday class in the morning. So like that, I'll send out the information on that, and then that is Saturday. Saturday evening I won't be able to have the class. And then Sunday morning, Sunday morning, we'll have our shloka practice class as usual, like that. Yeah. So from
And
next,
again, Monday you can't do the class, right, Shraddha Mataji? Monday again, I
yes,
think you said you can't
yes,
do the
yes,
class.
yeah, yeah. Because Monday there is Ramayana reading on Monday, I think.
Oh,
Yeah, yeah. So we'll just see here. I'll see if I can squeeze in something if I'm available and things like that.
okay.
We'll do that. Yeah, I think after Ram Navami we'll have a little bit more semblance, and we can get back into the rhythm. But please continue to stay in the rhythm. You've got shlokas to recite. I was very much appreciative of how much efforts you all took to going and learning how to recite the shlokas and then doing it multiple times. And then also I liked, I also like the fact that those who were not in the class, they also came and they also came and they also recited. So that was pretty good over there. Okay, so having said that, I'll take your leave. Please continue the good work and we'll meet again soon.
Thank you so much, Shraddha
Thank you so
Mataji.
much, Shraddha
Thank
Thank
Mataji.
you
you.
so much,
Thank you so
Mataji.
much.
Thank you so much.
Hare Krishna.